Sabrina, come crawl to mommy. Come here. Come here, gorgeous.
At 6:30 approximately a.m. on November 24th, 1997, Sabrina Page Eisenberg was discovered missing from her home in Valrico, Florida by her mother, Marlene Eisenberg.
Recalls waking up and getting her son out of bed first.
And as I turn around and I look and notice my laundry room door out to my garage is opened. And then as I get closer, I'm looking now out to the street and seeing that my garage door is up. So now I'm just looking straight out to the street.
We felt that we were living in an area that was safer. We were on a cul-de-sac. There's one way in and one way out. We had a sense of security.
Hours later, the couple says police coached them in this televised plea.
Please bring our baby back to us. She needs her mother and her father, and we all miss her and love her very much, and we need her to come home to us, please. It took all the strength that I had to say what I said, and then the minute I was done, I broke down in tears. Okay, hysterical. But of course the cameras were not put on me then.
Oh, for crying out loud. This is Girl, in case you guys haven't met her. Any hoot. Marlene got up at 6:30 to wake her son, Will, up for school, and she had proceeded on into the kitchen after going into Will's bedroom. In the kitchen, there was a door that led out to the garage. She said that that door was open along with the garage door, so she could see daylight directly out onto the street from inside of her home. She said that she thought to herself, whoa, what's that doing open? So she was surprised to see that the garage door was open and to see that the kitchen door was open. From my understanding and from Steve Eisenberg and Marlene Eisenberg's own statements, they claim that this door was never locked. They didn't even check it. Never locked. The garage door stayed open from time to time through the night, so this was not a first-time thing, because everyone had started to jump onto the Eisenberg parents wanting to know, what do you mean? So this just happened on the one night that you happen, again, to leave the doors open and unlocked and with an alarm. They stated that their alarm had come with the home and they had never used it. Understandable. But this door, I have a problem with that, because once it was brought to their attention, hold on a second, what are the chances here exactly of someone coming in and kidnapping your child the one time that you leave your door open? Well, then, as they were interviewed for CNN, for Nancy Grace, they told her that they never checked this door, that the garage door stayed open, the kids always were running in and out. That was their route to come in and out to play all day long. And it was summer, so yeah, they acted like it was no big deal.
The Eisenbergs say they'd accidentally left their garage door up all night.
We felt that we were living in an area that was safer. We were on a cul-de-sac. There's one way in and one way out. We had a sense of security.
Notice in this interview, Steve and Marlene Eisenberg go as far to say they never even checked that door because it was used so much and it was always open. My question is, if it was typical for this sort of thing to go on, why did it alarm her November 24th, 1997?
Seeing that my garage door is up. So now I'm just looking straight out to the street. And I ran.
Why that morning did it raise a flag with her when it had not any other time. That seems odd to me. So she reports her missing through 911, and I will put up the transcript from part of the 911 call.
911. Hello. I need the police. My baby's been kidnapped. All right, ma'am, need to calm down. Okay. All right, take a deep breath. What do you mean your baby's been kidnapped? I just got up to wake my son up. My garage door was wide open. My house and my door was wide open, and my baby's gone out of the crib. How old is your baby? My baby is 5 months old.
Where they come on 911, and she said that she needed police. Her baby had been kidnapped. So I guess she had already assumed at that point that the baby had been kidnapped. The lady dispatch operator asked her, "What do you mean your baby has been kidnapped?" She proceeds on to tell this story, and it reminds me of so many other 911 calls that were not quite true, that were false, that there was just a red herring to keep them from realizing they'd murdered. So instead of answering the woman of what do you mean she's kidnapped, she could have just said this last statement like so many others. You'll see so much talking, and then the last statement is really what you wanted. She was gone out of her crib. Okay? Yeah, my baby's gone out of her crib. I can't find her. Instead, she proceeds to lay out a story instead of getting right to it. I woke up this morning to get my son Will up for school. I walked into the kitchen. My kitchen door is open. My kitchen and garage door is open. And some of it was inaudible about the doors being opened. And my baby's gone out of her crib. That goes back to, it reminds me of a video that I did on the Morphew case, on Barry Morphew, when it came to detecting deception, convincing or conveying. Are they trying to convince you of a story or convince you of something, or are they trying to convey information to you? This tends to lean more on the convincing instead of conveying side, sadly. Now, like I said, Sabrina was getting ready to turn 5 months old in 3 days, so we might as well say that she was 5 months old. She was born June 27th of 1997, and they lived in Hillsborough County, like I said, Valrico, Florida. They lived in a very nice neighborhood. Now, another thing about this case that bothers me, it was on a cul-de-sac.
An area that was safer. We were on a cul-de-sac. There's one way in and one way out.
That's such an odd thing, kind of like the summer wells. How often do you see someone kidnapped from either a rural area or an area where you were trapped in, like a cul-de-sac, one way in and one way out? That's very, very risky. Possible, but not probable, sadly. Now, the parents have not been ruled out. Marlene said that she woke up, or before she went to bed, I guess. It was somewhere between 11 and midnight. She claims that she checked on the baby. Everything was fine. So that is the last time anyone saw the baby. And then, of course, she is the one who found that the baby was missing. So automatically, she's starting to fall into statistics that are just not looking very favorable for the Aisenbergs. Now, we all know that the majority of these children that come up missing or they are found dead, murdered. It's a case of filicide. Now, there are so many statistics under that they fall in. For example, one of them that kind of shocked me was 90% of these filicide cases were done by the biological parents. Now, only 10% was done by step parents. That shocked me because you hear so much about, mom's boyfriend moved in or the stepdad and something nefarious happened. And so that scared me. Now, she has a birthmark below her right shoulder. It is dots in the shape of a Y. These things are still very important because miracles do happen. So let's try to remain positive, as grim as it looks. Now, the parents have not been ruled out as suspects. And by 1999, the Aisenbergs had picked up and moved back to Montgomery County, Maryland, where Steve grew up and moved into his old childhood home. I'm assuming to get away from it, but from what I understand, they were also having financial issues. Now, they were having to pay an attorney, and I'm sure he was very expensive, and Mr. Cohen. Now, that's another thing. They retained an attorney very, very early on. Now, Steve Aisenberg says that it was his brother, who is an attorney, who advised them to retain an attorney for themselves. Now, this is so early on. I understand that with him being an attorney, he's the hammer, everything's the nail type line of thinking is what I'm getting at. But it also makes me wonder, did he see something behind the scenes that made him think, oh boy, they need an attorney. This is not good. Maybe things that we don't know or we didn't see. So now also, supposedly their dog Brownie did not bark. But while this intruder came in. Now, I think that this intruder was very lucky, and let me begin to explain to you why. Now, this lucky intruder found the night, since they did it often and didn't really check the doors, and sometimes they were left open. So this intruder picked the right night. The intruder knew exactly which bedroom to go to. The intruder also knew which was 5-month-old Sabrina's favorite blanket, her yellow blanket. It was missing. Okay, now let's look back at a few cases, because that's something that is pretty typical with filicide. When parents, especially a maternal filicide, they tend to want to comfort the child before and after death. So they will wrap them in their favorite blanket or lay them with their favorite item, whether it be a stuffed animal, whatever it may be. Now, you look at the Watts case. The girls' blankets were missing. Now, if he killed them at the home, which I don't believe he did, he took them to keep them comfortable until they didn't need the comfort anymore, he thought. Now, We all know that the Ramseys and JonBenet Ramsey's case have not been charged, but another case where these clever intruders know exactly where to go to find these children, know exactly which bedroom they're going to go in, and then even in a mansion, which is wow, impressive to me. And they know which is their favorite item. JonBenet Ramsey was wrapped in her favorite blanket with her favorite Barbie nightgown. Now, only 2 people knew where those things were at. One was the housekeeper, and she was not there for a few days because of the Christmas holiday. So, and it happens quite a bit. It's just something that's done by parents. So that's another thing that the lucky intruder, not only lucky intruder, but he didn't have the dog going crazy either to wake up the family. He was obviously experienced in cat burglary because he didn't alarm anyone. Now, there was a neighbor that spoke up and said that they did hear their dog, the Aisenberg's dog, Brownie, barking, not real loud, for a short time between 2 and 3 a.m. Now, this could have been from anything. It very well could have been from an intruder, but it very well could have been from an upset dog sensing and knowing what's happening in the home, regardless of who did it. You know where I'm going with this. Whether it was a parent or not, the dog would have gotten upset, I believe. So, and it would make sense if it didn't get too crazy upset that it would be a parent. I don't know. I'm just giving you my opinion and telling you the facts. So, investigators claimed also that the Aisenbergs used their situation to play on the sympathy of the nation and the public and used money raised to pay off their credit card debts. That's gross. Marlena. Let's get into Marlena and some of her actions now. Or their lack of. Everyone has talked about how cold Marlena is, how she shows no feelings, and there were interviews very early on to where she did not cry.
And I look in the crib and Sabrina's gone. And I scream. Please bring our baby back to us. She needs her mother and her father, and we all miss her and love her very much, and we need her to come home to us, please.
She cried. She went through the motions of crying, but there were actually no tears coming out of her eyes, which just seems odd, especially for a mother. But then after it was brought to her attention and the public came down on her pretty hard over it, then the next thing you know, she's at, I believe it was a candlelight vigil, and just ugly face crying. I shouldn't say for the cameras, but I'm sure she was very well aware, because in an interview with CNN and Nancy Grace, she said, or was it ABC? They've done quite a few interviews, but it was one of the two. And she told them that the cameras had just not caught her when she was crying like that.
Took all the strength that I had to say what I said, and then the minute I was done, I broke down in tears. Okay, hysterical. But of course the cameras were not put on me then.
Yeah, we've only seen the one real bad, ugly face cry at the vigil after she'd been called out. Odd. If she's truly that type of person that doesn't react that way, why wouldn't she just say, listen, guys, I do my grieving in private, and explain it that way. Like the Watts, they need to write a book on everything not to do and say. They were given polygraph tests. Steve passed his. Marlene, she didn't pass hers. The first one was inconclusive, and the second one, I've seen two things, that it was inconclusive, and one was that she just flat failed. Now, I will put up her excuse here. Marlene did not pass her polygraph because police told her it was because she was so terribly upset, but yet Steve passed his. Why? She says that she failed, and it is because the police officers even told her that she probably could not pass it because of all the stress and the anguish of the whole situation going on, that was probably very normal, and she used this as her excuse why she did not pass. Now, my thing is, the problem that I have is that the first interview you see on the news of them, where they're both very calm, not crying, trying to say, my daughter is missing and, yada, yada. There's no tears, there's no emotion. Not to be rude, but does she look like she's been crying all day?
Scream.
Now, she was asked about this again in the CNN interview with Nancy Grace. She told them that the reason that she showed no emotion was because that the police had told her that she needed to remain calm, not cry, and just put the information out there. So that's what she did. She said they told her to remain calm because it's going to be videoed. She said she thought they were doing what's best. Oh, so that's controllable. So now she's saying that those emotions are controllable. So you pick and choose, I guess. I'm still confused. If that's the case, and she's telling the truth, that, them just telling her to calm down, why didn't she just calm down for her lie detector tests? Plural. Both. She just had to calm down, right? So there's so much to get into with this case. All right, Sabrina is reported missing. At the time in 1997 when Sabrina went missing, it was the biggest land and water search in the state of Florida. So they searched, they find nothing. They tracked a scent that went through, they say, through the backyard and possibly over a fence. Now, there was a neighbor that came forward that claims that they saw headlights coming and going. That to me still does not point kidnapper. Kidnapper pulling into the cul-de-sac with his lights on. What? It could have been, like I said, it's possible, but let's go back to probable. Let's work more with our probables here. Now, it could have also been Marlene or Marlene and Steve. Oh, this hurts to even say. Taking Sabrina's body off somewhere. Probably to a body of water, I'm assuming. So, yeah. The headlights that came and went, and the neighbor hearing the dog, and supposedly there had been some attempted break-ins in the neighborhood. I don't know what she calls her neighborhood. One of them was 5 blocks over. So, I mean, did these people live in cul-de-sacs too? I'm curious to know that. Because I just have a feeling that they don't all live on cul-de-sacs. That's just such a dangerous thing. You're walking into a live trap that way almost. And yeah, okay, let's get into moving on forward. So they feel as if now they're being looked at. Ooh, can't imagine why. And I want to get into some of the statistics that not only make you question the parents more, obviously, and they also are interesting, informative, and sadly fit some of this, well, a lot of them fit this case. Now, I don't want to confuse anyone. When I go through some of these, I'm also going to throw out other cases where things like this have happened. Oh, as far as wrapping the child in comfort, Casey Anthony case. I'm sorry guys, I keep hitting my laptop. I'm a hand user and I try to keep them down here. But Kaylee Marie Anthony was found in her Winnie the Pooh blanket. I mean, it's something parents do. I don't know if it's subconscious, them trying to comfort them in death. I don't know what it is, but it happens quite a bit. So I want to go over some of the statistics now. I wrote them down. I did not memorize all of these. A lot of them I did, but not quite. So, and I'll also go over some of the evidence that was found that supposedly more of it that does not point to the Aisenbergs, or so they say, but I will also read to you what the prosecutors said rebutting some of the facts that the Aisenbergs have put forward that point away from them, supposedly. Now, on the filicide. Filicide is when parents murder a child. Now, infanticide, murder, homicide. Parents kill the child in the first year of life. So this case, if that is the truth, the Aisenbergs did this, it would fall under filicide or the infanticide. Now, there's also one, I didn't write it down, I can't remember the name of it, but it's within the first 24 hours. Oh, it's like neonicide or neonaticide or something. Wow, the reading under it, sick, scary. But if you're into educating yourself on this sort of thing, it's well worth it. There are quite a few articles. Now, statistics show Marlene was the last one to see Sabrina. She was the one to discover her missing. She was also the guardian, the parent. That's what happens in the majority of these cases. That's a lot when a child goes missing or is murdered. So, yeah, that's quite a bit. Now, in filicide, in all of these children, it came from a CNN Health article called "A Parent Killing a Child Happens More Often Than We Think." Now, 72% of filicide victims are 6 years old or younger. Now, a third of filicide victims, that's huge, are babies under 1 year. 1 year is the most dangerous time to be hurt or murdered. The first year. So she's falling into a lot of categories now. Statistics about the holidays, the stress about the holidays. They even thought that maybe Patsy Ramsey had a little bit of that coming on. And from what I understand, the Aisenbergs were having a little bit of financial trouble. They were having some monetary issues. So we've got monetary issues going into the holidays with a new baby, a third baby, a third addition to the family. That alone could also add stress, falls into the statistics again. And there are 5 different main categories that the parents of filicide victims tend to fall into. Now, I've read the 5, and the 2 that would make the most sense with Marlene Aisenberg, if she did this. One of them could be postpartum depression. Most of the time, it takes women a little bit of time to lose the weight from the baby, from the pregnancy. If you noticed, Marlene had lost her weight very quickly, and it makes me wonder if she wasn't struggling and suffering from some kind of postpartum depression. Now, it affects 10 to 22% of adult women before the infant's first birthday. Now, in a study of women with postpartum depression, I will link that, Winsner wrote it in 1999, 57% of these women reported obsessive thoughts concerning harm to their babies. Holy crap. So 10 to 22% of women are affected from postpartum depression. Now, 50% of these women reported obsessional thoughts concerning harm to their babies. Please, ladies, if you are struggling out there with any kind of postpartum depression and you have a new baby, I beg you to reach out to someone. I will definitely put a hotline number up here for you to call to get some kind of help. And I just feel that if you reach out, you could save your baby's life, yourself, your own life. So it's very real, and it affects a lot of women. Another one that I wonder if she may have fallen into is child maltreatment filicide. Now, that doesn't mean that she was regularly abusive to Sabrina, or that, she was just this tyrant of a parent to this baby or anything. It doesn't mean that exactly. It usually results from a battered child syndrome. And this came from another article from Kempe in 1962, and it says, the violent outbursts often occur in the overzealous application of discipline. Persistent crying is a common precipitant, and that came from Kadushin and Martin, 1981, an article that they wrote. So it's that seems likely, or postpartum depression led her to the child maltreatment filicide. You just don't know what led to that. And the only other thing that I could possibly think of is that, I don't know, if it wasn't a kidnapper and she didn't get aggravated because the baby wouldn't stop crying or something. Did she accidentally wake up to feed her and fall asleep on her type thing? Because that happened to a woman in the apartments I lived in years ago. And now, I think I told you, the CNN Health article, a parent killing a child happens more often than we think, is the name of it. And goes on, 72% of them, of the filicide victims, are 6 years or younger. But yeah, a third are under a year old. So she saw the baby last, found the baby missing, and the percentage of it being the parent or parents is pretty high. That 911 call, it reminds me of some, and there was one I listened to years ago. It's not funny, but this lady called. She had shot her husband, okay? And she called, and she told this big, long, crazy story. We had been sick and we all slept in the living room that night. Well, I went to the store to get McDonald's. Well, when I came back, I noticed the gun cabinet. Lady, why are you calling? What happened? It's usually that very last little bit. That last little sentence is all they had to say. And Patsy Ramsey's 911 call tends to do a lot of that as well. And I don't know, there's just a lot to it. Well, the polygraph. Let's talk about polygraph. Marlene took 2. Steve took 1 and passed it. Now, Marlene took 2 polygraphs. And I know everyone says, oh, they're not admissible in court. But actually they are. If both parties agree that it can be admissible, it's admissible. Not too many people are going to agree to that. She said that the reason she did not pass, and I will put it up here for you. I'm using the transcript from Nancy Grace's CNN interview with them years ago. Now, the problem is, in this article here from Unsolved, she says, and I believe she repeats it in CNN, they told me it was inconclusive, her first polygraph, and they told me that they expected it to be that because I was hysterical and everything, and my baby's gone, and they would expect that. So they would expect that. I wonder if they expected it the second time as well. Maybe the first time, but both times. And why did Steve pass if it detected such things as that? My last question on the whole polygraph is, if you have an issue with the polygraph and you're crying and upset, but yet you say you were so calm when the public attacked Marlene and the family, stating that she didn't show any emotion, she was not shedding any tears, because the police told her to be calm and not show any emotion, just to talk. Well, first of all, I didn't know that was an option that we pick and chose to do. And especially when a child is missing, within hours of your child missing, you can pick and choose when you turn it on and off. That's amazing to me. But also, why didn't you just turn it off then for the polygraph if it's that easy? Why didn't you just, quote, calm down, as they told you, and to be, quote, calm and relaxed? So why couldn't you have done that for the polygraph? I just have a lot of questions. Now I want to get into the part of it that the Aisenbergs claim that they have proof and evidence that they did not do this. Make their child disappear. So their evidence is, they said there was a blonde hair, and no one in the family has blonde hair, in the bed, the baby's bed. Well, the detective and the prosecutor said that, first of all, that hair was not in the bed. They said the hair was on a stuffed bunny rabbit that was in the trash can. Now, the fingerprints on the doors, there were 5 on one door, and I believe there were 7 in the home, 5 on the inside of a glass sliding door. But from what I understand, the prosecutor and the lead detective said that they checked those doors, multiple people had, and that those doors had not been used in a very, very long time. Also, if they had somehow come in and out of them and used them to make it look as if, they had not used it, but yet had, It was 5 days, 4 or 5 days after she had gone missing before they could get someone in there to get the prints. It was 4 days after the disappearance. So there had been media, family, friends, I'm sure church members, schoolmates, and parents. It's hard to say who had been in and out of that home, and I agree with them about the 5 on the glass sliding door. Now there was 1 on the washer. There's a million reasons. I can think of a million reasons why that would be on the washer. They had to have moved it in there somehow. People had to have touched it outside of Steve and Marlene to have moved that into the home if they did. Or to have it serviced. Service people could have come out and touched that. The previous owners could still have a print on it from where they had mechanicked on it. I mean, that's a stretch to me, but I guess that's all they have to cling on to. Now, also, there was 1 print, where was it? There was 5 on the inside of the glass door. There was 1 on the washing machine and 1 on the interior screen door. Okay. But also, they said that was another door that was not used. And I don't understand why the Aisenbergs are using these prints on other doors in the home as a defense when it had nothing to do with any of the other doors other than the ones that they left open. First it was accidental, then it was something they typically did, and they're, oh, oops, something we do and never expected it to happen. So it's hard to say which story is true. I'm sure they're afraid whether they're guilty or not, and they're probably trying to make sure that they're covering their tracks in all areas that they can. Now, I also wanted to throw in here that local law enforcement, FBI, and the FDLE have gone to 31 states and conducted over 1,600 interviews in this case and followed up on 1,100 leads to be specific. And Steve and Marlene Aisenberg claim law enforcement won't check out any other leads. That's one of their complaints. So I'm not exactly sure where they get that either, but they have said that there is, as far as anything goes, a shoe print, the fingerprints, I'm sorry. We had the fingerprints and now the shoe print. There was supposedly a shoe print inside Sabrina's bedroom on her bed skirt. Now, the bed skirt is what goes underneath the mattress and hangs over close to the floor, so you can't see under the bed. A little curtain, a little skirt around the bed. Now, it was not only on the skirt that was 12 inches up away from the bed, but it was also, the skirt was up under rails. So they said there's no way it could have been done that night. But of course the Aisenbergs swear up and down that they had never seen that before, and that was the first time that it had ever been noticed, and it had happened that night, according to them. Now, one thing I wanted to also mention. Now, I never do hear her say anything as far as checking on Monica, or her daughter that was the middle child, that was older than Sabrina. And that makes me a little curious as to why she doesn't speak much about it, or about Monica. Now, there was one other thing, I believe it was, that they said that was in their defense, was the different neighbor accounts. Now, there were different neighbors that had different accounts. And at the time, they did not have 90% of these accounts. And it was years later that they came forward with it, and the prosecutor and the police have checked a lot of it out, and they feel as if there is a reason for some of it, most of it, and they still are not finding any suspects through that, nor pointing them in the direction of any specific person. Now, I want you to also read what this lieutenant had written as far as this case goes. I'm sure there's plenty of things that I've missed along the way, but time is passing quickly, and this has turned into a pretty long